Okay, let's get started. I am honored to recognize the moderator and panelists for the conversation today for How to Design for Life. Our moderator is Kate Nelson, the editor-in-chief of Artful Living magazine. And the panelists, we have Chris Plantan, independent consultant for product design and development, Amy Hendel for Hendel Homes, Leah Johnson for Creekwood Hill, Kate O'Hara for O'Hara Interiors, and unfortunately, Andrea Swan is unable to attend today due to a last-minute personal matter, but we wish her well. Kate, I am going to hand it over to you. Thank you, everyone.
Well, thanks, Molly. Like you said, we're all spending a lot of time at home. So we want to make sure that our living spaces really, work for how we actually need to live, work, play, grieve, smile, all those things that we're doing all at the same time these days. So we're just going to dive right in because I know you guys want to hear more from our panelists than maybe you do from me in an intro. So I've put together a few questions, but please, like Molly said, send over your questions and we'll try to get to as many as we can at the end of the discussion. So we can't talk about home without addressing sort of where we're at right now. So my first question for the panel, and I'll sort of, direct things to see who wants to answer these questions first. Over the past few months, how have you transformed your home to better meet your needs, your family's needs? Maybe, Kate, do you want to kick things off?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I personally have kind of rearranged my home a little bit because we need more office spaces in our home now than we needed before. So we've got kind of a dining room set up that I've always been a big fan of using a dining room as an office. And so that area has become a little bit more of like a work area rather than an eating area, though it's less private. So it's good for projects and getting work done and spreading out. And we've kind of rearranged, like a guest bedroom is now an office. Martha, my mom, actually is probably who taught me to use dining rooms as offices, because that's what she does. And she's always used them that way. But now that she's working from home, she is driving my father, her husband, bananas because he wants to watch a movie or do something. And she's like, no, you have to be quiet. And he's like, that does not work. That does not work every day. So she actually went up to their now finished, they had remodeled their attic. They live in a historic home that they remodeled as like a giant closet just for her. And so she is like a caricature of an interior designer right now, sitting in her fabulous closet, surrounded by fashion with a desk and a computer, because that is like her dedicated office space these days. And she's loving it, loving every second. But there have been some transformations for sure.
Amy, how about you?
Yes, well, it's definitely even transformed from school ending to summer. So, but I would say during the school time, we were set up all over the house. I have a little home central office, but it's funny, you put the kids in, in maybe the main office and one's at a table, but they always come to you still. So I still had kids sitting next to me doing homework, just talking. They just always want to be around mom or dad. So it's funny how they attract to you, but even exercising, and where do you do just some of those activities, and we have a little setup downstairs, but we would find ourselves upstairs in this kids lounge and kind of doing some things even together with our kids. So I feel like every room in our home was transformed somehow in a little different twist. Even their bedrooms, when you're home all day, and you move around, like one day or 1 week you'll be in the kitchen, and then the next week you need a change of scenery, so you move to the dining room or to another room. So I even find that with chairs, I'll sit in one chair for a few days and I switch to another one. But just the functionality of a home and how it can be used in different ways is pretty unique.
Well, and that's a great segue into my next question, which is, so when you're trying to create living spaces, that are really tailored to your individual lifestyle, whatever that might be, what are some considerations that you should have in mind? Leah, maybe you could take this on.
Excuse me. I think that, well, for one, definitely, you know, finding things that work for your family, you know, if you have little kids, or if you're like me, I have two 20-something-year-olds at home still. So there's a lot of like in and out. We have two cats and a dog, so there's a lot of busyness going on, and everyone's at home. So definitely finding things like fabrics and what wears for your family, or kind of taking into consideration how spaces, like we were just talking about, work for those family members.
And Chris, I'm always inspired by your home and the little changes that you make to it all the time to make sure that it's truly serving you and suiting your needs. So what are some considerations you have in mind when you're sort of making those little changes to make sure that your living spaces are ideal?
Yeah, oh, and they do change a lot. Living in a smaller, older home, it's like you do move things around, and it is quite inspiring. And so different rooms inspire me in different ways, but I have to say I have a table, Kate, you know, it's probably in every room. So there is a work surface. Does drive my husband crazy because they tend to get filled up. But anywhere there's a table is a great space to meet, gather, and absolutely work. It's just how to contain all the piles. So I found that that's kind of been my go-to right now, is finding things, whether it's a boot tray for files and papers, you know, setting on the table, or baskets, but it's really kind of containing that workspace, or that transformative space. Lots of things.
Well, and then talking about, you know, your individual homes. So how did you design your home with intention? Amy, you know, you are, of course, in the home building industry. So let's start with you.
Well, you know, even with our clients, when they ask us, you know, oh my goodness, we're starting this project, it's so overwhelming, you know, how do we do it? I always suggest you start with some sort of inspiration, whether it's a color or a fabric or an item or a collected thing from a vacation, just anything that you love. It could even be a picture of a room, but something has to inspire you to kind of move forward with the next step. And so even with our home, I feel like every room started with just one thing, and it just kind of molded into what it is. And like for our living room, it was one fabric that I just loved, and those became the two little stools in front of the fireplace. But that then kind of moved into the other aspects of the room. So that's kind of how I approach design within my own home, and how we kind of educate our clients on how to move forward with something that can be overwhelming at times.
Kate, maybe you can add on to that, because I know that, you know, you typically travel quite a bit. You are sometimes in Austin, sometimes in Minneapolis. So how have you designed these different spaces with intention to really serve your needs?
Well, I've definitely found myself kind of living my motto recently, I suppose, because I always I talk a lot with clients about how we really, in addition to kind of taking inspiration and finding things of beauty in our homes, we also need our homes to work for us. And often the most like frustrating parts of our day, the chores we hate doing, are can be made so much more joyful or just less painful even by having a beautiful or functional space to do them in. I, for one, not a big fan of laundry, and yet like when I'm in a space, a like nice functional laundry room, I don't mind it. I don't mind it at all. And so do I really dislike laundry, or do I just hate the cramped spaces I wind up in? So the way that this kind of relates to your question is, you're right. My life is usually fairly nomadic, and I'm traveling all over the place, and my home is sort of designed as a way station rather than a place to really sit and settle. So I've been kind of rethinking like, okay, this doesn't really work for me as well. You know, it was pretty apparent within a few weeks' time, because after 3 weeks, this is the longest I've been here for a stretch for 5 years. I don't know. So I found myself rethinking spaces. I've rearranged furniture, I've changed rooms, because how I'm living in them is very different. And I think that that's like one of the biggest takeaways I've had, and something I've probably talked about before, but now I'm living it more, is just that, like, if you're uncomfortable in your space, change it. Just change it. You know, you don't need to use a dining room as a dining room if that's not how you need it. And your room doesn't have to be arranged the way you thought you would want it arranged when you first built it or moved into it or remodeled it. Life changes and evolves, and so can your home.
I love that. Life changes, and so can your home. With that in mind, this is something that I'd love for everyone to answer sort of briefly. So what is one feature or element that can instantly elevate a living space? And if you can just, give a brief explanation as to why that's your go-to. Leah, why don't we start with you?
I love lighting. Lighting for me, definitely. And, not like off the shelf, kind of generic or builder grade lighting. Like, have fun with lighting. There's so many beautiful pieces out there. And I think that really energizes a room.
Amy, what's the one element that you can't live without?
I'm going to make this really simple. I love flowers. Whether it's an orchid plant or, just a bouquet or just cut flowers, putting those, on the coffee table, on the back console table, next to you on your desk, it makes me feel that much better. So to me, it adds so much to a space.
Chris, what's your one feature or element that can elevate a space?
So hard, and this is going to sound so funny, but I love a classical urn. So I would say an urn in any place just looks great. That sense of balance that it can bring to a room, whether it's a small one or a big one. Intuitively, we do love balance, in our design in our homes, and just I'll put an urn on any surface.
And last but certainly not least, Kate, how about you?
I love, like Amy, I like having plants, not flowers. I'll kill them, but they die fast. But plants for me, I can usually keep a plant alive. And I like them to be kind of large in my spaces if possible. And natural light is just, for me, really important. Some people like cozy spaces. I just like light flooding through. And so anything I can do to arrange my spaces so that more light is welcome, I'm all for that. And I do think that can transform a space, just rearranging things so that the light can travel. It can make a big difference.
Totally. Okay, so we've been talking about, some of our inspiration, some of our favorite elements. So what are some of your go-to resources for home furnishings and accessories? We'd love if, for everyone who's sort of tuning in, it were something that maybe they can access from home. So I know we were talking about all the things we loved sort of pre-pandemic, but what are some resources that you're really liking now that are accessible, whether that's online or an updated shopping experience? Leah, what are your go-tos?
Goodness. One go-to that will always be my favorite is Schoolhouse Electric out of Portland would be one of my hands down favorite places to go. I just love their aesthetic, but I also just shopping and finding and exploring local places and artists and makers. That's definitely kind of my go-to.
Do you have some favorite local makers?
Oh, well, I love Hennepin Made for sure. I would have to think. There's so many, but yeah, just working with finding and exploring new artists. Vintage shops are my favorite. So definitely kind of, exploring those places and finding unique and fun pieces.
Amy, what are your go-to resources for finding furnishings and accessories?
You know, I'm going to make a plug for a certain group of people because interior designers, they have access to so many. And, you know, we're in the building aspect, and so we're kind of orchestrating the whole ship as it moves forward. But, you know, it's finding someone who is in it every day, all day, who knows where to go, what brands to choose, you know, on everyone's budget, because it's from low to high. And so just having the people surrounding you who really are in it every day. We rely on the interior designers to really select those things specific to the client. So find someone who you love to be with, you trust, and work with them on finding things local to across the country to around the world. Because really the job of an interior designer is to elevate your style. So they can do that so well when they know you well.
Well, Kate, that seems like a great segue to your go-tos as an interior designer. Are there some, you know, hidden gems or some secret resources that our viewers could tap into?
Well, I think, yeah, I actually, this is a tough question to answer simply because things have changed so much. And I'm thinking, gosh, what some of the things that I would have been go-tos even a handful of months ago can be challenging now to access. So my first answer probably piggybacks a little bit off of Amy. We have a lot of people reaching out to us now because things aren't quite as accessible. Supply chains are challenged at the moment. And a lot of people, even if they can get something, there are a lot of delays. So now can be a great time to work with a designer because we do have access to hundreds of lines and we have a direct line of communication with them to you know, get things into our homes. But that said, I mean, there are a ton of fantastic, like local, you know, places down in Austin. There's a place called Wildflower that I love to go. Gosh, there are lines that are starting to open up more for like more retail, buyers. Like if you love rugs, we love Fan Bell rugs, of course. And then I just love some products. Like I love almost any Nest product. It just smells so amazing. And, you know, they make these great candles and things like that. And I feel like sometimes the things that are available maybe a little bit more easily are kind of the small things that can create maybe a little bit more of a sensory experience to help kind of relieve the tension of being at home maybe all the time and around the same exact people all the time and help create just a little bit more of a relaxing experience. So I do love Nest, and I probably have a candle somewhere behind me here. So I would say that that's a favorite.
Kate, we did get a question. Can you repeat the name of that store in Austin?
Wildflower. They're in downtown Austin, kind of at, oh gosh, where are they? Kind of near the 6th Street area by the downtown Whole Foods, if you're like right down there.
And Chris, I know for you that you really love gathering pieces and not necessarily knowing where their home will be, but then sometimes, you know, it speaks to you in a certain way. So have you found, since we're not able to go to shops quite in the same way that we used to, have you found any online resources that you really have enjoyed during this time?
Oh, yeah. I love First Dibs and just looking at what they've got, and you can just find that one piece, like we've all referenced. Sometimes that one thing will just, you know, speak to you. Even though it's a little out of your budget and it's stretching you, it will become your treasure. So I do find some wonderful things on that. And then it is just kind of hunting around those great, when we take a stroll or a walk and happen upon something. Those end up being my favorite pieces. So I would still encourage people to get out, stumble upon different shops. Even if it's a garden center, you'd be surprised, you know, what you can find there as well to reappropriate, you know, in different rooms of the house. And I do have one place I go to all the time when I'm in California or Santa Monica, Venice area, and it's called the Tortoise General Store. And it has a wonderful aesthetic of lovely Japanese items, crafts, accessories, hardware items, and it's just a gem. So I'm hoping all these little boutiques are opening up soon, you know, at a safe pace that we can get back inside and support them.
And then, you know, we're talking about how a lot of industries are changing and have had to adjust to what we're currently experiencing. So how do we think, this is a sort of big future question, but how do we think all this time we've spent at home will affect home trends moving forward, you know, and from a building perspective, a design perspective, or just, you know, decor, things like that. So Amy, maybe you could start off with that.
Sure. We have found over the past few months, since we are finding that our oasis is our home, we really everyone is wanting to make it as functional as possible, as beautiful as possible. We feel like we've had so many more phone calls for renovations and remodels of, you know, how do we make this space multi-purpose, or how do we make it just prettier or just or wider or make it more open. But I feel like from these past few months and how times have changed, I think our homes will become not just third or fourth on the list of to-dos, but really there's heightened sense of, okay, this is where I'm going to be. I think Kate, you had said, like, make my laundry room better so I actually enjoy doing laundry. I think you could probably use that for any room in the house or in your home of just, okay, how can this be more functional? How can this be more beautiful? So I think some of those things we're seeing the trend for people to just really put their resources into their home, because it's going to be a place that they probably spend more time than not.
Chris, you spend more time on sort of the product development side of things. How do you think that the actual items that we're, you know, buying and putting into our homes might evolve over the next months, years?
Again, it goes to function. Function is beautiful. Even if it's messy function, it's absolutely beautiful. And I've always, placed importance on the environment, how it contributes to our well-being, and creating these multidisciplinary places of oasis in the home. So again, the items just need to be multifunctional so that we can have different places really to call our sanctuary and kind of protect us from that outside and keep us safe. And I do think that the trends in design are going to go much more from just style to what is actually bringing us comfort and promoting wellness.
Kate, any additional thoughts from a design perspective?
Well, we're seeing that people are expanding their idea of home beyond the interior house itself, and more just thinking of their, you know, backyards and their gardens and their landscaping. So for some people, it's become a little bit of a new part of their lifestyle to garden and to feel like they're contributing to their sort of health and wellness and giving themselves reasons to be outside. And we've also seen people who maybe didn't feel, we have, like Amy, a lot of people coming to us wanting to remodel. And then we have some people saying, you know, we're not really comfortable taking on a remodel right now, but we need more space. So we want to create it outside because that's the space we have. So more outdoor spaces, we're seeing a fair amount of that too. Yeah.
And we're getting in so many great questions from the audience, so thank you, keep them coming. So we're actually going to shift over to our Q&A portion. So I want to make sure we get to a lot of these. So Leah and Kate, you had both mentioned that lighting is such an important part of, you know, what makes a space really livable and enjoyable. So one audience member question we have is, how do you get more natural light without undergoing construction? So, you know, what are some ways that in terms of how we decorate or design that might be able to give that same feeling of, you know, more light? Leah, could you touch on that?
There's some tricks you can use. So if you're speaking to, maybe you don't have very many windows or something in a space like that, you could speak to things that will reflect the light a little bit. So kind of bounce the light around the room more. For me, I love white's like my go-to. But definitely I've been seeing such moody colors that actually do play with light very nice. And then, you know, again, having just beautiful, you can do beautiful lamps, things like that. I'm also kind of more on the minimal side for window dressing. So I think kind of leaving windows more bare can also help bring in more of the natural light that you may be looking for. Or I know we've been thinking of doing it. Even like skylights, I think, are such a nice solution to if maybe your view on the wall on the outside maybe isn't so great, or you know, if you put a window somewhere, it would look straight into your neighbor's dining room or something like that. So,
Kate, anything else to add on that for any tips or tricks of the trade to sort of bring more light into your space?
Yeah, I think that Leah's right. The wall colors that you have in your home, you know, light colors are going to tend to be a little bit more reflective and allow the light to travel more. If you love window treatments, I do love them, but they can block light. But you can use sheer fabrics that will help light travel even when they're closed, that will still allow a bit, and you can just be a little bit minimal in your use. And I also think I keep saying this, but you know, walk around your home as though you're buying it for the first time, and you're buying it now with this new kind of reality in mind, and notice where the light does travel nicely. Notice where the light is best, and consider maybe rearranging your home a little bit so that you're spending time there, and so that your more library cozy type spaces are in the spaces that where the light doesn't hit quite as well. That can kind of sometimes it's just making sure that you're in the spaces where the light is when you want to be there.
Can I add to that too? We just, speaking of light, this just happened to us. I moved 2 chairs. Actually, we had a sofa in front of a large window, and it had been there for 10 years. And we decided just to move furniture around, as we're speaking of what we're doing in our homes these days. And I moved the 2 chairs in front of the window and moved the sofa kind of perpendicular to it. It is night and day. The light comes through the windows so much better. It's more open. I've noticed that, you know, that's where the sun comes in towards the end of the day. So it's just a great spot. My kids are sitting there more. It's more of a conversation area. So, I mean, that was just flipping 2 areas, and it dramatically made a difference. So
We had a really similar experience. We just had 2 kind of lounge chairs. I'm actually sitting in one of them right now. I just nudged it over here. But they were positioned in a way that really delineated the room nicely, but we were never using the door to go outside. It sort of blocked the space. So we just rearranged things, and it wasn't so much a matter of light as flow. Now we go outside so much more. I'm out on the balcony and the porch, and like, it just changed everything in terms of how we use our kind of main living area spaces. And yeah, so just a little change can kind of blow your mind. And sometimes it's something that isn't bothering you, but it's impacting something that is bothering you or contributing.
And Kate, I like your, tip with this idea of, you can move where the light changes and where it's best throughout the day. I think we're trying to set up maybe more permanent solutions, but I find myself, I call it chasing the sun, where I start in the sunniest room in the morning, and then I sort of shift over to a different spot in the house in the afternoon. It's a good change of scenery, and just feels a little bit more dynamic than sitting in the same space all day. So we're talking a lot about things that, ways we want to change or modify our homes right now. But I think we want to ground this a little bit in reality. So Amy, I think you could really answer this question well. How do you balance what you want with, let's say, maybe a remodel with the return on investment for resale?
That's a great question, because you know, you're talking about something that's an emotion where I love something, and then the impact of the budget. And so they don't go together. And you might love something, but it might be expensive. So you have to weigh, is it worth it or not? But it's, you know, it's a process. I think what we like to do is walk our clients through kind of everything that they would wish for, everything that they would want in the space or in the home, and then educate them on the cost associated, the benefits, the function, all of it, so they can make those wise decisions with our help too, saying yes, that's worth it, or no, it's not. Let's focus resources somewhere else, where you're going to really feel the function aspect of your home play into how you live, how your kids live. That may be beautiful. And again, it's kind of our job to be the dream crusher sometimes and say, I'm sorry, but it's probably not worth it. You can do it, but it's probably not worth it. But it's, I mean, and every project's different. So every home is different. Every room is different. Every client is different. So, you know, it's an exercise that we go through every time that is different, but it's fun to explore who they are. Kind of be a strategic partner alongside of them as we walk through the process.
And we're having a few people ask this question. So what are good resources for color and design inspiration? Chris, maybe you could take this one.
Yeah, I can't say enough, you know, be a voracious reader and consumer of magazines. There's so many great things online now, of course, Pinterest and House and just a whole lot of different resources. But fabrics are great for looking for resources for color combinations. I think the best thing to do is if you can start your home with a neutral palette and lay on the color as you're comfortable. Color looks different in every room. And as Kate, as you were saying, chasing the sunlight, color changes. But I would just definitely consume, not in a bad way, but consume all the content you can. And then look at color combinations in nature you like, or in fabrics, or a picture or anything, and then just start building on that palette.
Can I add to that too, Chris? You mentioned to read, which I love that you said that, because we look at these magazines and we look at these pictures and they're beautiful, but someone reminded me a long time ago, like, read the articles. You'll get so much more from it and from, you know, these magazines, or read the books, but don't just look at the pretty pictures. Like, read what they have to say, and it comes to life that much more.
It sure does, doesn't it? And to find, you know, the reasons behind the decisions, and it's really remarkable. It's a sense of discovery almost.
I promise I did not bribe them to say that you should read magazines, but you should. Leah, do you have any additional go-to resources for, you know, color and design inspiration? Maybe specifically, a lot of people are asking about color. Maybe.
Can you hear me?
No, Kim.
Oh, okay. That was fair. For me, I love like Instagram and same thing, magazines, and just looking at your surroundings, really. And if you walk into a place that just feels right to you, you kind of look around and take note of, you know, how that space vibes, or kind of the colors that you're seeing around you and how they make you feel. To me, a lot of that, I gain inspiration that way for color.
That's a great,
go ahead.
That's a great segue into another question. So here in Minnesota, we really love sort of Scandinavian design, which tends to be, you know, more minimalist, a lot of whites, a lot of neutrals. But then how do we balance maybe that with this idea of bold, moody colors and bright colors that we're seeing a lot of on like Instagram? Kate, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. I think that, well, I think that when you're talking about color, once you've kind of found your inspiration, I will just follow up. I would recommend looking for good color guides, because like you know, there are a lot of like white color guides, and because there are cool white tones and neutral white tones and warm white tones and things that are going to be creamier, look a little bit yellow, or things that'll look a little lavender. And so it's very helpful, I think, to kind of just to round out that answer, to look for some guides, because you can know what general inspiration you have for a room and still have no idea what paint color to choose. And you can also spend some time on Farrow and Ball, or, you know, Benjamin Moore and other paint makers of paint and paint colors to learn from them too. And a lot of bloggers and designers have paint guides. But in terms of kind of putting together I think that what we see right now is, you know, people do love the kind of minimalism and light colors that come with Scandinavian design. It can be really nice in Minnesota winters to just get some light traveling through a space that tends to get kind of dark through the season. But there are a lot of ways to balance that. And Scandinavian design actually requires a good bit of balance through textures, through heavier finishes, you know, whether that's wood or metal, and a lot of textiles that can be really quite colorful, and they can help ground a space and create some warmth, because one of the key features of a Scandinavian style is that it does feel really warm and really welcoming, even though it is quite minimal and quite monochromatic from like the standpoint of maybe the walls. So I think that there's a lot that you can do there. I also think that just because a style tends to be popular in the Twin Cities doesn't mean that you can't go in 1,000 different directions. We have clients who love modern design, transitional and traditional design. There's kind of a new traditional that's become very, very popular. You know, some people in the Twin Cities, I would say generally like a little bit more of a casual interior, because the people in the Twin Cities tend to really live in their spaces, and there's a lot of indoor-outdoor activity. We're just a very active community in Minnesota. But I think that the actual range of styles that people in the Twin Cities in Minnesota embrace is pretty wide. It's just maybe a little bit more of a comfortable lifestyle and a home that is arranged with not just the summer, but also the winters in mind.
And one last question to sort of bring things full circle. This is an interesting one. Which room in the house do you wish you would have designed differently had you known there was a pandemic on the horizon? Very specific, but sort of a fun one. Amy, again, you're in the home building industry, and so maybe that's a good one for you to answer.
Oh my goodness, that's a tough one, because I feel like every room could be redesigned. I would say our great room, where we all gather, and it's changed because of it. So I guess I can speak to it because it was a problem. No one would go in there. It was just the way the furniture was laid out. It wasn't a spot where people could see each other. You were kind of cut off. The proportion was a little bit off on certain things. And so just with some of our pieces, I needed a bigger sofa. But now we have like a full conversation area, and now kids are in there. They're sitting in the chairs by the window. Even in the beginning when we couldn't even go out, we'd play games in there. Not as much anymore, but I mean, we would, especially since it's summer, but we would hang out in there, which was great. So again, creating those spaces where it's inviting, it's welcoming, that might be mine.
Well, that is actually it for our discussion today about how to design for life. And I think, if there are a few things to take away, it's don't be afraid to change your home based on your different evolving life needs. And also, like Amy just said, if there's a space that's not serving you, fix it. Make it so it does work for you and how your life might be right now, or 5 years from now, or 10 years from now. So thanks so much to everyone for this great lively discussion.